Ever wonder what happens when the most powerful man on Earth dies suddenly? It's a recipe for chaos, especially when his chosen heir is nowhere to be found. Today, we're diving into one of ancient China's greatest mysteries, the tragic tale of Fusu, the lost prince of the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. Picture this. It's 221 BC. A man named Ying Zheng has just conquered all warring states, unifying China for the first time in centuries. He declares himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. He's a visionary, a tyrant, a builder of wonders like the Great Wall and the Terracotta Army. His empire is vast, his power absolute. But an empire this grand needs a worthy successor, and that's where his eldest son, Fusu, comes in. Fusu was everything his father wasn't. While the emperor ruled with an iron fist, following the harsh philosophy of legalism, Fusu was a man of principle and compassion. He was deeply influenced by Confucian ideals of benevolence and righteousness. He saw the suffering of the people under his father's brutal regime, the back-breaking labor, the merciless punishments, the burning of books and burying of scholars. Fusu wasn't afraid to speak his mind, often pleading with his father to be more lenient, to rule with a gentler hand. He was the moral compass of a court drowning in fear and ambition. Naturally, this made him popular with the people and many officials who hoped for a brighter, more humane future. He was the designated heir, the crown prince in all but name. But his idealism also put a giant target on his back. His younger brother Huhai was the complete opposite, pampered, weak-willed, and easily manipulated. Huhai had no grand vision for the empire. He just wanted the power that came with the throne. And he wasn't the only one with dark ambitions. Enter the villains of our story, the cunning eunuch Cao Gao and the calculating Prime Minister Li Si. Zhao Gao was Huhai's personal tutor, and he saw the young, foolish prince as his puppet, his key to ultimate control. Li Si, on the other hand, had been one of the architects of the emperor's brutal policies. He knew that if the kind-hearted Fusu took power, his own influence, and maybe even his life, would be forfeit. Fusu represented a threat to their entire power structure. This trio Huhai, Zhao Gao, and Li Si formed a shadowy alliance, a ticking time bomb at the heart of the empire. Just waiting for the old emperor to die. Their chance came in to 10 BC. Qin Shi Huang was on a tour of his eastern territories, searching for the elixir of immortality. But irony had other plans. The emperor, who so desperately wanted to live forever, died suddenly in his imperial carriage, far from the capital. Only a few people knew. His son, Huhai, Zhao Gao, and Li Si. The emperor's death was a state secret. To prevent panic and rebellion, they concealed his body, even filling a cart with salted fish to mask the smell of decay as they raced back to the capital. This is where the conspiracy truly ignites. The emperor had left a will, an imperial edict, clearly naming Fusu as his successor. At the time, Fusu wasn't in the capital. He had been exiled to the northern frontier to oversee the construction of the Great Wall alongside the great General Meng Tian. His father had sent him there as a punishment for his constant criticism, but also perhaps to toughen him up, to give him military experience. With the emperor dead and the true heir hundreds of miles away, Zhao Gao saw his golden opportunity. He convinced the weak-willed Huhai and the fearful Li Si to destroy the real will. In its place, they forged a new imperial edict. This fake decree accused Fusu of being unfilial and it commanded him and his loyal general Meng Tian to commit suicide. A messenger was dispatched, riding north with a death sentence disguised as the emperor's final command. Now, we must rely on the traditional historical records, primarily Sima Qian's records of the Grand Historian. According to this account, when Fusu received the edict, he was heartbroken. Believing it to be a genuine command from his father, he prepared to take his own life. General Meng Tian, a seasoned veteran, was immediately suspicious. The emperor was on tour. Why would he send such a command without any warning? He urged Fusu to wait, to send a messenger back to verify the order. It all seemed too convenient. Too strange. But Fusu, ever the dutiful and perhaps naive son, refused. He said, "When a father commands his son to die, what is there to question?" Overwhelmed by grief and a sense of filial duty, he drew his sword and ended his own life. With Fusugon, Mengtian was imprisoned and later forced to commit suicide as well. The path was clear. Hu Hai ascended the throne as the second emperor, with Zhalgao pulling the strings from behind the curtain. The Qin Dynasty, which was meant to last for 10,000 generations, would crumble in just 3 years under their disastrous rule. This is the official story, the one that has been told for over 2 millennia. It's a tragedy of loyalty, betrayal, and a son's fatal devotion. But is it the whole truth? This is where the mystery deepens and conspiracy theories begin to swirl. Some historians and thinkers have questioned this neat, untidy narrative. Could Fusu, an intelligent man surrounded by a powerful army and a loyal general, have been so easily tricked? Let's consider the alternative. What if he realized it was a trap? Mengtian was a brilliant general with 300,000 loyal troops under his command. He was a force to be reckoned with. If Fusu and Mengtian had decided to fight, they could have easily marched south and challenged the usurpers. So why would they just give up? This leads to a fascinating, albeit unproven, theory. What if Fusu faked his death? What if, upon receiving the fake edict, he and Mengtian saw the writing on the wall? They knew the court was a viper's nest. Perhaps they realized that even if they won, the empire would be plunged into a bloody civil war, undoing everything his father had built. Maybe, just maybe, the principled Fusu chose a different path. Imagine this. Fusu, disillusioned with the corruption of power, decides to vanish. He stages his suicide, leaving a body that could be identified as his, and slips away into obscurity. He lets the world believe he is dead, freeing himself from the chains of the throne and the cycle of violence. It's a romantic notion, but is there any evidence? Some folk legends and suppressed accounts hint at this possibility. There are tales of a mysterious figure, a man in white, who emerged during the rebellions that followed, helping the common people. Some have speculated this could have been the vanished prince. There are also theories connecting him to the origins of the Xiongnu people, or even suggesting he fled east, possibly reaching Japan. One theory even connects him to the legend of Sufu, the court sorcerer who sailed east with thousands of young men and women in search of the elixir of life and never returned. Could Fusu have been among them, starting a new life far from the empire's chaos? These are, of course, just speculations. There is no concrete historical evidence to support the idea that Fusu survived. The official account of his suicide remains the most widely accepted version of events. But the mystery endures because it speaks to our desire for a better outcome. We want the good prince to have outsmarted the villains. We want to believe that his story didn't end in such a senseless, tragic way. Whether he died by his own hand or vanished into the pages of history, the legacy of Fusu was profound. He represents a what-if moment in Chinese history. What if this compassionate Confucian prince had taken the throne instead of his incompetent brother? Could he have softened the harsh edges of the Qin regime, won the hearts of the people, and prevented the swift collapse of the dynasty? Could the Qin Empire have lasted for centuries, changing the entire course of Asian history? We'll never know for sure, but the story of Fusu, the lost prince, serves as a timeless reminder of how history can turn on a single moment, on a single forged letter, and how the clash between ideals and ambition can bring down even the mightiest of empires. The ghost of Fusu haunts the ruins of the Qin Dynasty, a symbol of a future that never was. This isn't just a tale of ancient treasure. It's a mystery involving imperial secrets, cutting-edge science, and a Modadai conspiracy. For thousands of years, jade has been more than just a beautiful stone in many Eastern cultures. It was considered a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds, a vessel for the very essence of life, or Qi. Emperors and nobles believed jade could preserve the body, purify the soul, and even grant immortality. They were buried in intricate jade suits, surrounded by jade objects, all to protect their spirit on its journey to the afterlife. This belief in jade's spiritual power is the key to understanding the chalice. Now, imagine a ritual practiced only by the most powerful emperors. A ceremony so secret it was barely whispered about in historical texts. It was called breath-keeping. The belief was that a person's final breath contained their life force, their spirit, their very consciousness. Capturing this breath was the ultimate act of preservation. The emperor, on his deathbed, would exhale one last time into a specially prepared vessel, sealing his essence for eternity. The vessel for this sacred duty, a chalice carved from the purest white jade, believed to be the only material worthy of holding an imperial soul. This brings us to the jade chalice of breath itself. It's not a large object, small enough to be held in 2 hands, but its craftsmanship is breathtaking. The jati is almost translucent, glowing with an internal light. Around its rim are inscriptions, not in any known ancient language, but in a complex cipher known only to the emperor's most trusted mystics. These symbols are believed to be magical incantations, designed to bind the spirit to the chalice. Even more fascinating are the 4 animal seals carved into its base: a dragon, a phoenix, a tiger, and a tortoise. These are the 4 celestial guardians of the constellations, meant to protect the captured breath from any malevolent forces. The detail is so fine you can see the individual scales on the dragon, the feathers on the phoenix. It's a masterpiece of artistry and mysticism. But here's where the story takes a scientific turn. When experts first examined the chalice under powerful microscopes, they found something extraordinary. The surface of the jade, which appears perfectly smooth to the naked eye, is covered in a network of microscopic fissures and cracks. These aren't signs of damage. Researchers believe these micro-fissures were intentional, created through a lost technique of rapid heating and cooling. Why? The theory is astonishing. These tiny cracks were designed to increase the chalice's surface area on a microscopic level, creating a perfect environment to trap and preserve organic molecules from a person's breath. We're talking about cellular fragments, DNA, the very biological signature of a long-dead emperor. It represents a form of ancient chemistry we are only just beginning to comprehend. The chalice wasn't just a symbolic vessel, it was a scientifically designed biological container. For centuries, the chalice was thought to be a myth, a flight of fancy from ancient chronicles. No one had ever seen it. That all changed in 2025. It was unearthed in a grand archaeological dig or found in a forgotten tomb. It was recovered in a dramatic raid on a high-tech smuggling convoy moving through the remote mountains of Central Asia. The smugglers knew they had something valuable, but they likely had no idea of its true significance. It was hidden inside a lead-lined case, protected by layers of foam, clearly destined for a shadowy private collector willing to pay a fortune to own a piece of forbidden history. When the chalice arrived at a secure lab, the initial analysis sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Using non-invasive techniques, they confirmed the presence of dried, ancient biological residue deep within the micro. The chalice wasn't empty. The breath it was designed to hold was still there, preserved for centuries. The potential was staggering. If they could extract and sequence the DNA, they could unlock the genetic code of an ancient emperor, confirming lineage, health, and perhaps even secrets of the past that were never written down. It was a historical and scientific discovery of a lifetime. But then, something strange happened. Just as the news was about to break, a wall of silence went up. Official channels went quiet. Research papers were retracted. The authorities who had proudly announced the recovery suddenly began to downplay its significance, even deny its existence. Why? Why would they try to suppress a discovery of this magnitude? The answer is as complex as the chalice itself. First, there are geopolitical implications. Several nations could lay claim to the artifact, turning a historical treasure into a diplomatic firebomb. Second, there's the Pandora's box of cloning. The existence of viable, imperial DNA raises ethical questions that no one is prepared to answer. Could you, or should you, resurrect a figure from the distant past? The very idea is terrifying to some. Finally, and perhaps most disturbingly, there are whispers of a powerful, shadowy organization that has been hunting the chalice for centuries. This group believes the chalice holds not just a spirit, but a key to immense power, and they will stop at nothing to get it back. The authorities might not just be suppressing the news, they might be hiding the chalice for its own protection, and for ours. The jade chalice of breath is now hidden away again, its location a closely guarded secret. It exists at the intersection of myth, science, and conspiracy. It's a testament to ancient wisdom and a symbol of modern-day intrigue. It forces us to ask, are there secrets of the past that should remain buried? And consequential mysteries. The death of Prince Fusu, the heir to the Qin Empire. Was it a straightforward suicide, as history tells us, or was it a meticulously planned political assassination? Let's unravel the conspiracy. Our story begins in 210 BC, the first emperor of China. Qin Shi Huang is on a grand tour of his eastern territories. He's the most powerful man in the world, obsessed with finding the elixir of immortality. But ironically, death finds him first. Far from the capital, the emperor suddenly falls ill and dies. This is where the conspiracy ignites. Only 3 people are present at his deathbed. His youngest son, Hu Hai, the chief eunuch, Zhao Gao, and the prime minister, Li Si. The emperor's eldest son and rightful heir, Fusu, is hundreds of miles away, supervising the construction of the Great Wall alongside the empire's most respected general, Meng Tian. Before his death, Qin Shi Huang allegedly dictated a letter to be sent to Fusu, instructing him to return to the capital Shenyang to oversee the imperial funeral and ascend the throne. But this letter never reaches him. Instead, Zhao Gao, an ambitious and cunning court official, seizes chance. He fears Fusu's rise to power. Fusu was known for his Confucian values and his disapproval of the emperor as harsh legalist policies that Zhao Gao and Li Si had helped enforce. If Fusu became emperor, their careers, and possibly their lives, would be over. So, Zhao Gao hatches a plan. He persuades the weak-willed Hu Hai that the throne should be his. Then, he turns his attention to the powerful prime minister, Li Si. He plays on Li Si's fears, reminding him that Fusu favors General Meng Tian and would likely replace Li Si as prime minister. The threat works. Li Si agrees to join the conspiracy. The trio decides to conceal the emperor's death. They load his body onto a chariot and continued the imperial tour as if nothing happened. To mask the smell of the decomposing body, they fill accompanying carts with salted fish grim and clever deception. All the while, they are forging a new imperial edict. This forged decree is a masterpiece of political treachery. It accuses Prince Fusu of being unfilial and disloyal. It claims that for his failures, the emperor has ordered him to commit suicide. A similar order is sent to General Meng Tian, accusing him of collusion. The decree is sealed with the emperor's own seal, which Zhao Gao controls, giving it the full weight of imperial authority. When the messenger arrives at the northern frontier, Fusu is devastated. He reads the letter, believing it to be his father's final command. In ancient China, filial piety was the highest virtue. To disobey a father, let alone an emperor, was unthinkable. Despite General Meng Tian's suspicions, who urges the prince to verify the order, Fusu is overwhelmed by grief and duty. He withdraws and takes his own life. Meng Tian, refusing to follow suit, is imprisoned and later forced to drink poison. With the 2 biggest obstacles removed, the conspirators' path is clear. They return to the capital, finally announce the emperor's death, and present the will that names Hu Hai as the successor. Hu Hai ascends the throne as the 2nd emperor of Qin. The coup is a success, but this is where the official story starts to show cracks. When we dig into the historical accounts, particularly Sima Qian's records of the Grand Historian, or Shigi, contradictions emerge that challenge this entire narrative. First, let's consider the eyewitnesses. The only sources for this event are the conspirators themselves, Zhao Gao, Li Si, and Hu Hai. Can we really trust the account of the very people who benefited from Fusu's death? They had every reason to craft a story that legitimized their actions and painted Fusu's death as a noble, albeit tragic, suicide. There were no neutral parties to corroborate their version of events. Then there's the 2nd edict. The official story claims a 2nd decree was sent to the capital, naming Hu Hai as the heir. But think about the logistics. The conspirators were on the road, far from the central government. How could they issue a decree naming a new emperor while simultaneously pretending the old one was still alive? The imperial court and the rest of the empire were operating under the assumption that Qin Shi Huang was in charge. An edict appointing a successor would have immediately exposed their lie and triggered a massive political crisis. It is far more likely that no such second edict existed until they were safely back in the capital. This brings us to one of the most tantalizing clues: the potential for missing information in the Shiji Sima. Qian wrote his history about a century after these events. He was known for his meticulous research, but he was also working under the Han Dynasty, which had its own reasons for portraying the Qin Dynasty as illegitimate and doomed from the start. Some scholars have speculated that Sima Qian may have had access to conflicting accounts, or that parts of his original manuscript were edited or lost over time. There are famous lacunae, or gaps, in the Shigi, where sections are noted as being blank in the original scrolls. What if one of these missing sections contained a different version of Fusu's death? What if it held testimony from a soldier or a minor official who saw something that contradicted the official narrative? We might be reading a carefully curated version of history, shaped by the victors. This leads to the most compelling theory of all. Did Fusu actually die at the border? Is it possible that a faction loyal to the prince helped him escape? Think about it. General Mengtian, a seasoned military commander, immediately suspected the decree was a fake. He commanded an army of 300,000 loyal soldiers. It's hard to believe that no one in that massive force, many of whom respected Fusu, would have tried to intervene. What if Mengtian's plea wasn't just to verify the order, but a coded message to Fusu, buy in time for an escape plan? The official story says Fusu immediately committed suicide. But what if this was a cover? Perhaps loyalists staged his death and smuggled him away. The motivation would have been immense: to preserve the true heir and one day reclaim the empire from the usurper. This theory suggests that a small group of soldiers, loyal to Fusu and Mengtian, could have created a diversion, faked the suicide, and helped the prince disappear into the vast northern territories. He could have lived in hiding, waiting for an opportunity to reveal himself. While there's no direct evidence for this, it's a plausible scenario given the high stakes and the military power concentrated at the border. The chaos that soon engulfed the Qin Dynasty under the disastrous rule of the second emperor would have been the perfect cover for such a fugitive prince. So, what are we left with? We have an official story provided by the murderers themselves, filled with logical inconsistencies. We have historical texts that may be incomplete or biased, and we have the tantalizing possibility of a secret escape and a hidden heir. The death of Fusu wasn't just a family tragedy. It was the event that sent the Qin Dynasty spiraling into collapse, paving the way for civil war and the rise of the Han Dynasty. The truth of what really happened on that remote northern border may be lost to time, but the questions it raises remind us that history is often written by those who hold the pen, not necessarily by those who tell the truth. Ever wondered what happens when a royal tomb is opened and it's empty? Not robbed, just empty. Today, we're rediving into one of ancient China's most chilling mysteries: the disappearing heirs of the Qin Dynasty. We're talking about grand tombs, built for princes, that contain everything but the one thing that matters most: a body. Our story begins not on the ground, but from space. Satellite scans and ground-penetrating radar have given us an unprecedented look beneath the earth near the famous Terracotta Army. Archaeologists were targeting what looked like a cluster of princely tombs, expecting to find the sons of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. What they found instead sent a shockwave through the historical community. Many of these tombs were elaborate fakes, containing false chambers and deadened passages. It was as if someone had gone to immense trouble to create the illusion of a burial, a ghost tomb for a ghost prince. Let's zoom in on one particularly baffling site, designated as Tomb M34. This tomb was clearly designed for a high-ranking royal. It had all the trappings: precious artifacts, bronze vessels, and remnants of lavish silk. At its center sat a magnificent, sealed sarcophagus. The archaeological team held their breath as they prepared to open it, anticipating the discovery of a long-lost Qin prince. They lifted the heavy lid, and inside, nothing. Absolutely nothing. No bones, no hair, not even a speck of human dust. The sarcophagus was pristine, untouched. So, where was the prince? This isn't a one-off anomaly. Across the Qin imperial necropolis, this pattern repeats, tombs meticulously prepared, yet mysteriously vacant. This has led historians to some bizarre and fascinating theories. One of the most intriguing is the ancient ritual known as breath capture or hungatharan. In some ancient Chinese beliefs, a person's soul, or hun, was linked to their breath. If a body couldn't be recovered, perhaps lost in battle or at special ceremony was performed. A piece of the deceased's clothing would be waved in the air to capture their last breath, their essence. This garment would then be buried in place of the body, allowing the soul to find its way to the afterlife. Could these empty tombs be the result of such a ritual? Perhaps the princes died far from home, their bodies never recovered. But other clues suggest something far more sinister. In the soil surrounding some of these empty tombs, researchers have found evidence of what seems to be a clandestine funerary procession. Not a grand, public affair, but a hurried, secretive one. They've found scattered chariot fittings and traces of disturbed earth that do yuan to line with a formal burial. It's almost as if the real burials happened elsewhere, in the dead of night, away from prying eyes. This wasn't a ritual for a lost body. This was an active attempt to hide one. The few items found inside these empty tombs only deepen the mystery. In one chamber, archaeologists discovered a set of 9 jade plugs. These plugs were used in ancient China to seal the orifices of the deceased, believed to prevent their vital essence from escaping. Finding the plugs without the body they were meant for is like finding a key without a lock. It's a haunting reminder of the person who should be there. Adding to the strangeness, highly sensitive instruments have detected faint but unmistakable traces of liquid mercury vapor within these sealed chambers. We all know Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with mercury, believing it could grant immortality. He famously built a mercury river in his own tomb. The presence of mercury in his son's tombs suggests a connection. But what? Was it meant to preserve a body that was never placed inside? Or was it part of a symbolic ritual we no longer understand? So, we re-left with the ultimate question. Why would the powerful Qin court go to such lengths to hide or even destroy the remains of its own royal heirs? The answer likely lies in the brutal politics that followed the first emperor's death. After Qin Shi Huang died, his youngest son, Hu Hai, conspired with the eunuch Zhao Gao and the chancellor Li Si to seize the throne. To secure his power, the new emperor, Qin Shi, ordered the execution of all his brothers and sisters. Historical texts describe a bloody purge where dozens of princes and princesses were systematically eliminated. Now, imagine you are the architect of this coup. You've just murdered the rightful heirs to the throne. The last thing you want are grand, public tombs that could become shrines for dissenters. You don't want future generations to remember these princes or rally around their memory. What do you do? You erase them. You stage fake burials to maintain the illusion of tradition and respect, while ensuring the real bodies are never found. You might cremate them and scatter the ashes, or bury them in unmarked graves far from the imperial capital. The empty tombs aren't just missing bodies. They are acts of political erasure, a calculated effort to wipe a whole generation of royals from the pages of history. These empty tombs tell a story of fear, conspiracy, and a ruthless grab for power. They are silent monuments to the forgotten children of the first emperor, princes whose very existence became a threat to the new regime. The disappearing heirs of the Qin weren't lost to accident or misfortune. They were deliberately vanished, and they're magnificent. Empty tombs stand today as chilling testaments to one of the darkest chapters in ancient Chinese history, a mystery where the absence of evidence is, in fact, the most powerful evidence of all. When the mighty Qin Dynasty, the first empire of China, crumbled in 207 BC, it didn't just collapse into chaos. It sparked a desperate, decades-long search for a figure who could restore its former glory, a surviving heir to the dragon throne. This is the story of the bloodline hunt. Our story begins just 2 years after the death of the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. His empire, built on iron-fisted rule and radical reforms, was already teetering on the brink. His legitimate heir, the capable and respected Crown Prince Fusu, had been forced into suicide through a forged decree. In his place sat the weak and easily manipulated second emperor Hai. The people were suffering under crushing taxes and brutal laws. The stage was set for rebellion. In 209 BC, two humble soldiers, Qin, Shang, and Wu Guang, were leading a group of conscripts when they were delayed by heavy rains. Under Qin law, being late was a death sentence. Facing certain execution, Chunsheng rallied the men with a powerful question. Are kings and nobles born with a special kind of blood? This sparked the Decedent uprising, the first major rebellion against the Qin. But Chunsheng did something clever to legitimize his cause. He claimed to be acting in the name of the wronged prince. He told people Fusu wasn't dead, or that he was avenging him. This rumor spread like wildfire. The public had adored Fusu, seeing him as a just and compassionate leader, a stark contrast to his father and brother. The idea that he might still be alive, or that someone was fighting for him, gave the rebellion immense popular support. It showed that even rebels needed the legitimacy of the Qin bloodline to win over the hearts and minds of the people. As the Qin Dynasty disintegrated, the conflict evolved into a massive power struggle, primarily between two great warlords, the noble Xiang Yu of Xiachu and the shrewd Liu Bang of Han. This period is known as the Xiachu-Han contention. Both men were brilliant strategists, but they knew that military might alone wasn't enough. They needed to eliminate any potential rivals, and the biggest symbolic threat was a surviving Qin prince. Imagine the power a true heir would hold. A single, recognized prince could rally loyalists, unite scattered armies, and instantly delegitimize both Xiang Yu and Liu Bang. The hunt was on. Both Xiachu and Han deployed networks of spies across the former empire. Their mission was twofold: find and eliminate any male descendants of the Qin royal family, and simultaneously squash any rumors of a surviving prince that could fuel resistance. It was a shadow war fought in tea houses and marketplaces, with whispers and daggers. Every child who vaguely resembled the royal clan was a potential target. Every rumor of a hidden prince was a threat to be stamped out. The stakes were impossibly high. Finding a prince could mean winning the empire. Failing to find him could mean losing everything to a resurgent Qin. The paranoia was intense, turning the search into a brutal and systematic purge of anyone connected to the old imperial line. Yet, despite the purges, loyalty to the Qin didn't just vanish. For many officials, soldiers, and common folk, the Qin had brought an end to centuries of warfare. They had standardized language, currency, and measurements, creating a unified state for the first time. To them, the chaos of the rebellion was a step backward. These loyalists didn't just give up. Historical accounts and more recently discoveries of ancient bamboo slips speak of secret Qin loyalist enclaves. These were hidden communities, often in remote, mountainous regions, where remnants of the Qin court and army fled. They operated in the shadows, preserving the old traditions and, most importantly, protecting the secrets of the fallen dynasty. They were a government in exile, waiting for a sign, waiting for the return of a true leader. It's within these hidden enclaves that the hope of a surviving prince truly burned the brightest. They were the guardians of the bloodline, and they would have done anything to protect an heir. This brings us to one of the most compelling theories to emerge from this period: the legend of the hidden prince in the west. The heartland of the Qin state was in the west, in the Wei River Valley. It was a rugged, easily defensible territory. The theory goes that when the capital city of Xianyan was about to fall, a group of die-hard loyalists managed to smuggle a young prince, perhaps a son or grandson of Fusu, or another young royal of the city. They didn't flee east into the heart of the rebellion, but west, back into the Qin heartland and beyond, toward the vast, uncharted territories of Central Asia. This escape route would have been perilous, leading them along the paths that would one day become the Silk Road. They would have been heading towards places like the Gansu Corridor, a land of oasis towns and nomadic tribes. Far from the reach of Chu and Han armies, this journey would have been an epic in itself. A small, desperate caravan carrying the last hope of a dynasty, disguised as merchants or refugees, navigating treacherous mountains and vast deserts. Their goal wasn't to reclaim the empire immediately, but simply to survive, to preserve the royal bloodline until a time when they could return. This theory isn't just fantasy. We know there were significant movements of people westward during this chaotic period, and for a group trying to protect the Himalaya target, disappearing into the remote and less populated west would have been the most logical choice. They would have carried with them not just their prince, but also symbols of their authority, sacred items that could one day prove their legitimacy, and this connects directly to the central object of our entire investigation. The mysterious chalice. If a small group of loyalists escaped with a hidden prince, they would have taken items of immense symbolic value. A chalice, perhaps used in imperial rituals or belonging to Prince Fusu himself, would have been a perfect symbol of legitimacy. It would be a tangible link to the past, a proof of identity more powerful than any written document, which could easily be forged. Imagine these refugees, centuries later, still holding this chalice as the ultimate proof of their royal descent. Could this chalice have traveled with them on this desperate journey west? Could it be the key that links a lost artifact to a vanished prince? The possibility is tantalizing. The chalice isn't just an object. It could be the last remnant of a bloodline hunt that shaped the course of Chinese history. It's a physical echo of the loyalists who risked everything for their prince and their dynasty. The Han Dynasty, founded by Liu Bang, ultimately won the war and unified China. They tried to erase the memory of the Qin, painting them as pure tyrants, but they could never completely erase the rumors of a lost heir. For centuries, the story of the vanished prince lingered, a ghost haunting the new empire. Did a descendant of Qin Shi Huang survive? Did he and his followers establish a new home in the far west? Their chalice a silent testament to their lost heritage. We may never know for sure. The trail has gone cold, lost to the sands of time. But it remains a powerful reminder that history is full of secrets, and that even the fall of the greatest empires can leave behind mysteries that continue to capture our imagination thousands of years later. What if a simple object held the key to rewriting history? We're not talking about a dusty scroll or a grand monument, but something far more intimate. A jade chalice. But this is no ordinary cup. Rumored to belong to an ancient emperor, it's now at the center of a scientific storm. And what we're finding inside could change everything we thought we knew about the past. Today, we're going deep inside this incredible artifact, using cutting-edge technology to uncover secrets that have been sealed for centuries. This is the story of the chalice, its forbidden contents, and a single fragment of DNA that could spark a global controversy. Imagine holding a piece of history so precious, so fragile, that even breathing on it feels like a risk. That's the challenge facing scientists examining the imperial jade chalice. Traditional methods are out of the question. You can't just scrape a sample off a priceless artifact. So, how do you see inside a solid piece of jade without destroying it? You use the same technology doctors used to see inside the human body. A high-resolution CT scanner. As the chalice was carefully placed inside the machine, the team held their breath. They weren't just looking for cracks or imperfections in the stone. They were hunting for something far more extraordinary. Microscopic traces of organic material, trapped inside the jade for millennia. What the first scans revealed was beyond their wildest dreams. Hidden deep within the natural fissures of the jade were tiny, dark pockets. These weren't part of the stone itself. They were residues, remnants of whatever the chalice last held. The first layer of the mystery had been peeled back, revealing a tantalizing clue. The chalice wasn't empty. It was a time capsule, with the CT scans pointing the way. The investigation escalated. The team brought in specialists in materials science to analyze the chemical composition of the residue without physically touching it. Using techniques like X-ray fluorescence, they bombarded the chalice with energy beams, reading the unique signatures of the elements within, and that's when things got really strange. The first compound they identified was cinnabar. For those who don't know, cinnabar is a bright red mineral, a mercury salt. In ancient China, it was highly prized, not just for its color, but for its use in esoteric alchemy. It was a key ingredient in so-called elixirs of immortality. The irony, of course, is that cinnabar is incredibly toxic. Heating it releases deadly mercury vapor. The presence of cinnabar immediately raised a chilling question. Was this chalice used for a life-extending ritual, or was it a vessel for a sophisticated poison? The discovery sent a ripple of excitement and dread through the lab. They weren't just looking at an old cup anymore. They were looking at a potential crime scene. The mystery deepened with the next discovery. Alongside the cinnabar, the instruments detected traces of something called lac resin. This is a natural polymer secreted by insects, used for centuries as a durable varnish and sealant. Finding it inside the chalice was puzzling. Why would you seal a cup from the inside? It wouldn't make sense if it were used for drinking. But then, a new theory emerged, one that sounded like something out of a fantasy novel. What if the goal wasn't to seal something asterisk in asterisk, but to capture something fleeting? One of the more radical hypotheses proposed that the resin was used in a ritual to capture the emperor's final breath. In many ancient cultures, the breath was seen as the very essence of life, the soul itself. Could this have been an attempt to preserve the emperor's spirit within the jade? A vessel made of a stone believed to have protective, life-giving properties. It's a mind-bending idea, but the combination of the toxic elixir ingredient and a sealant makes you wonder. Was the chalice designed to deliver death and capture life in the very same moment? We were venturing from archaeology into the realm of ancient beliefs and forbidden practices. This is where the story takes a turn into the truly unbelievable, the presence of organic residue, the cinnabar. The resin it all pointed to something being trapped inside. But could something as fragile as biological materials survive for centuries? The team decided to focus their scanners on the micro-fissures within the jade itself, the tiny cracks invisible to the naked eye. And there, protected from the elements, they found it. Fragments. Degraded, shattered, but undeniably organic. The next step was to identify what it was. Using the most sensitive techniques available, they began the painstaking process of DNA sequencing. The lab went into overdrive. Contamination was the biggest enemy. The entire process was conducted in a clean room environment, with every surface sterilized. The tension was immense. If they could successfully sequence even a tiny fragment of DNA from this residue, it would be the discovery of a lifetime. The question on everyone's mind was, whose DNA was it? And could it possibly have survived all this time, locked inside a stone prison? The stability of ancient DNA is one of the most debated topics in science. DNA is a complex molecule that starts breaking down the moment an organism dies. Heat, water, and oxygen are its worst enemies. So, how could any DNA survive inside this chalice? The answer, scientists believe, lies in the unique environment of the jade itself. Jade is incredibly dense and the micro-fissures where the residue was found would have created a tiny, sealed chamber, protecting the organic material from air and moisture. Furthermore, some minerals, including those that might be present in jade, combine two DNA molecules, acting as a natural preservative and shielding them from enzymatic decay. It's like a geological Fort Knox for genetic information. The chalice wasn't just a container. It was a perfect preservation vessel. The combination of the lac resin sealant and the protective properties of the jade created a 1 in a billion chance for these ancient fragments to survive into the modern era, waiting for the right technology to come along and read their story. When the first preliminary results came back from the DNA lab, the news spread like wildfire, igniting a political and scientific firestorm. The DNA was human, and it wasn't modern contamination. The specific markers and degradation patterns clearly indicated it was ancient. The moment these findings were leaked, the chalice transformed from a museum piece into a national treasure of immense and controversial significance. Suddenly, government officials were involved. Historians and archaeologists from around the world began weighing in. The scientific community was buzzing with a mixture of excitement and skepticism. Some hailed it as the greatest archaeological discovery of the 21st century. Others cried foul, suggesting the possibility of a highly sophisticated forgery or misinterpretation of the data. The lab was placed under immense pressure, forced to re-verify their findings again and again. The chalice had become a hot-button issue, touching on national identity, cultural heritage, and the very limits of scientific proof. The academic world was split right down the middle. On one side, you had historians who had long believed the stories of the emperor's final days, and his obsession with immortality were just myths. They pointed to the lack of corroborating texts and the fantastical nature of the claims. To them, the chalice was likely a later fabrication, a beautiful object created to romanticize a legendary ruler. They argued that the materials found inside could have been added at any point in its history, and they demanded more evidence before accepting such an extraordinary claim. On the other side were the believers. This group of historians and archaeologists argued that ancient texts often contain grains of truth, even within their mythological framing. They saw the chalice as the missing physical evidence, the smoking gun that confirmed the old stories. For them, the combination of jade, cinnabar, and human remains was too specific to be a coincidence. The debate rages on in academic journals and at international conferences, with both sides passionately defending their positions. The chalice is no longer just an object. It's a mirror reflecting the deepest divisions in how we interpret the past. So, what happens next is the million-dollar question, the one that could cause a historical earthquake. The fragmented DNA from the chalice is just one half of the puzzle. To prove its origin, you need something to compare it to, and that's where the ultimate taboo comes into play. The remains of the emperor and his known relatives are interred in a sacred, protected mausoleum that has never been excavated. Opening it is considered unthinkable by many, a desecration of a sacred site and a national icon. Yet, the scientific and historical pull is undeniable. A successful DNA match would be concrete proof. It would confirm the chalice's authenticity, validate ancient legends, and provide an unprecedented biological link to a figure shrouded in myth. But failure, or a non-match, could discredit the chalice entirely, branding it a fake. And the act of excavation itself could cause irreparable diplomatic and cultural damage. The world is watching. Do we risk disturbing the dead to confirm a truth about their life? The answer to that question is as complex and fraught with peril as the contents of the chalice itself. The final chapter of this story is yet to be written. What if I told you that a single, unassuming object could rewrite the entire history of one of China's most powerful dynasties? Today, we're not just telling a story of emperors and armies. We're on a cold case investigation, piecing together the final moments of the Qin Dynasty. The central mystery, the fate of Crown Prince Fusu, the man who should have inherited an empire but vanished from history. And at the heart of it all is a mysterious chalice, an artifact whose journey is as dramatic as the dynasty itself. The year is to 10 BC. The first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, dies suddenly on a tour of his vast empire. The official story, recorded by the grand historian Sima Qian, is a tale of palace intrigue. The emperor's youngest son, Hu Hai, conspired with the powerful eunuch Cao Gao and Prime Minister Li Si. They forged a decree ordering the rightful heir, Crown Prince Fusu, to commit suicide far away on the northern frontier. And according to the records, Fusu, ever the dutiful son, obeyed without question. He took his own life, and the dynasty collapsed into chaos just a few years later under the disastrous reign of his younger brother. It's a clean, tragic story. But is it true? History is written by the victors, and in this case, the victors were the ones who benefited most from Fusu's death. For centuries, this was the accepted truth. But modern science and archaeology are starting to poke holes in this ancient narrative. This brings us to our first scenario. Fusu followed the decree and died by suicide. This aligns perfectly with the historical texts. Fusu was known for his Confucian virtues filial, piety being chief among them. He had been exiled to the northern border to oversee the construction of the Great Wall alongside General Meng Tian, receiving a direct order from his father. Even a shocking one might have been something he felt honor-bound to obey. The psychological pressure would have been immense. Isolated, far from the capital, and with no way to verify the decree's authenticity, his options were limited. To defy the emperor's will would have been treason. So, he falls on his sword, a tragic hero caught in a web of deceit. This is the official story, neat and tidy, but it relies on one key assumption, that Fusu is completely unsuspecting. Now let's consider a second, more dramatic possibility. Fusu was assassinated. Imagine the scene. The fake imperial envoy arrives at the desolate northern camp. They present the forged scroll, but what if Fusu, or his loyal general Meng Tian, smelled a rat? Fusu was no fool. He had previously clashed with his father Eshar's sleek policies and was well aware of the court's treacherous politics. It's entirely possible he questioned the order. What if he refused? In that case, the conspirators couldn't risk letting him live. A struggle ensues. Fusu is killed not by his own hand, but by assassins acting on behalf of Zhao Gao and Hu Hai. The suicide story is then fabricated to cover up the murder and legitimize the new emperor's claim to the throne. This version paints Fusu not as a passive victim, but as a man who fought back. It's a darker, more violent end, and one that makes a lot of political sense. Why leave such a huge loose end alive? But there is a third scenario, the most tantalizing of all. What if Fusu escaped? This theory moves from the realm of historical record into the world of speculation, but it's grounded in logic. General Meng Tian commanded a massive army of 300,000 loyal soldiers on that border. If Fusu suspected a plot, he had the military might to protect himself. He could have faked his own death, letting the conspirators in the capital believe their plan had succeeded. With the help of Meng Tian, he could have vanished, slipping away to live in exile, waiting for the right moment to return. Some fringe theories even suggest he fled east, across the sea, perhaps to Japan or Korea, seeding legends of a noble prince arriving from a foreign land. While there's no direct evidence for this, it's a powerful idea. The rightful emperor, alive and in hiding, a ghost haunting the new regime. It transforms Fusu from a tragic figure into a symbol of lost hope, the last rightful heir of the Qin. So we have three possibilities: suicide, assassination, or escape. How can we ever know the truth? This is where our Chalice comes in. For 2,000 years, the story was just words on bamboo slips. Then, in the late 20th century, a group of archaeologists excavating a forgotten tomb far from the Qin capital made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the academic world. The tomb wasn't imperial, but it was lavish, belonging to a high-ranking noble. And inside, they found it, a bronze chalice, exquisitely crafted, with an inscription that didn't make any sense. Let's trace the journey of this incredible object. It was forged in the imperial workshops of the Qin capital, Xianye. The craftsmanship is undeniable, a masterpiece of its time, intended for someone of immense status. The bronze alloy, the intricate cloud-like patterns, everything points to imperial hands. We know from chemical analysis that the ore was sourced from mines under direct state control. This was an object meant for royalty. Bio writes it should have been found in an emperor's tomb, but it wasn't. The historical record tells us that after Fuji's death, the capital was sacked, and the imperial palaces were looted. We can imagine this chalice, a spoil of war, being stolen amidst the chaos as the dynasty fell. For years, it likely passed through the hands of warlords, merchants, or nobles of the new Han Dynasty that followed. A beautiful, but dangerous, piece of the old regime. Owning it might have been seen as a sign of rebellion. Eventually, it ended up here, buried in a tomb hundreds of miles from where it began. The person buried with it was clearly wealthy, but their identity is a mystery. Why did they possess the prince's chalice? Were they a loyalist who had helped him escape, keeping this as a secret memento? Or were they simply a collector of rare and beautiful objects who had no idea of its true significance? The chalice was rediscovered by archaeologists, a silent witness pulled from the earth. And here is the crucial part. Modern forensic technology allows us to analyze things the tomb robbers of antiquity could never see. Using advanced imaging techniques, researchers found something incredible hidden beneath centuries of corrosion on the chalice's inner rim. A tiny, almost invisible inscription, etched with a fine needle. It was written in a secret script used only by the Qin imperial family for private correspondence. Deciphering it took years, a linguistic puzzle of epic proportions. The inscription reads, "The north is cold. The dragon sleeps. I endure. The north is cold." A clear reference to his exile on the northern frontier. The dragon sleeps. The dragon was the symbol of the emperor. This could mean his father. The emperor is dead. I endure. This is the bombshell. Not I die, not I obey. But I endure. This single word challenges the entire official narrative. It's a message of survival. It suggests Fusu did not commit suicide. It points to a conscious decision to persevere, to wait. This chalice wasn't just a stolen cup. It was a message, a final testament from a prince who refused to die. It suggests he faked his death and planned to outlast his enemies. So, what does this all mean? This one artifact, this chalice, forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew. The official history, written by Sima Qian, might be a fabrication designed to legitimize a usurper. Prince Fusu, long considered a tragic but weak figure, emerges as a clever and resilient survivor. He may have played the long game, faking his own death and disappearing, hoping to reclaim his throne one day. We don't know if he succeeded, or if he died in obscurity, but the chalice proves he didn't give up. The history of China's first and shortest-lived empire has been turned on its head. It shows us that history is not a static story, but a living investigation, constantly being updated with new evidence. An object can hold a voice, and a single word can echo through millennia to tell a different truth. The chalice's journey from the emperor's court to a northern battlefield, through the hands of thieves and nobles, and finally into a forgotten tombs. A mirror of the dynasty itself, a brilliant creation, a violent upheaval, a long period of darkness, and a final, stunning rediscovery. It reminds us that so much of what we call history is just the story that survived. But beneath the surface, there are other stories, other truths, waiting to be found. The story of Prince Fusu and his chalice is a testament to that. What survives is never the body, only the breath.